Could you hear me?
Henry, I see you. I hear you.
That's a cat's name. It's my wife's computer because I don't want to go through that crap with my wife.
No problem. We got you. Listen, we're doing something a little different today, just as an FYI. We're testing out Playback's ability to stream at the same time. So we're live right now on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, I forget a few others. So this will be kind of the raw footage, if you will, and then we're going to take, just the piece of the show and promote that, obviously. So if you happen to be watching on any of those platforms, welcome. You're part of a grand experiment. We won't be able to see any comments if you make them, but please leave any comments about anything that Steve says, because some of his stuff is out there. We all know that. He said the Houston Rockets would make the playoffs and the Warriors wouldn't. I mean, come on. Doesn't matter that he's right. So feel free to leave your comments. We'll include them if we see any as part of our show. All right. Sound good, Steve?
All good.
Right on. I came up without my phone. Hold on a second. I'm going to need to find that because that's my countdown timer. I'll be right back.
Go ahead.
All right. Sorry about that. Let me get things ready, and then we'll start the clock and start the show. I need my copy. Here's your article. There we go. All right. Lots of good stuff to talk about today. All right. Yeah. This is the pause before the show. All right. It's time to talk basketball after a very busy, very interesting week in the NBA. I'm Jose Salviati, editor at thePeachBasket.net. He's Steve Prisciello, a longtime educator, vice principal, and athletic director. And this is the 13 Rules Random NBA Thoughts podcast, the best 15 minutes of NBA random thoughts online. This is your first time listening. As always, welcome. Thank you. We're glad you found us. This podcast was born out of the content in Steve's random NBA Thoughts articles. Steve and I have exactly 15 minutes to discuss what's on his mind around the NBA. And as we mentioned, there was a lot going on around the NBA this week. Today, we'll discuss his latest NBA Rules Random NBA Thoughts article. Steve, are you ready?
Ready.
All right, let's do it. We're going to start the timer now. The big news in the NBA this week was the firing of Bucks coach Adrian Griffin. Seemingly came out of nowhere. I know I was shocked. I'm a West Coast guy. Steve, you're an East Coast guy. You, unlike most, weren't surprised. In fact, you said in your article that all the warning signs were there. What were they?
Start with Terry Stotts in the preseason. Start before that when they hired him. They didn't trade at that time. They didn't have Lillard. They hired him and they didn't have Chris Middleton or Lopez. They didn't re-sign. So they hired him before all this, and they might have thought that they can let this man grow as a coach.
Yeah.
Now, with all the signings, Terry Stotts comes in as an assistant and to run the offense, and he quits during preseason. That's a little interesting. Their defense is horrible. He tried to bring in some changes. He brought Brook Lopez. He brought him up higher against screens. And what it did was took away basket protection. Like Mike Budenholzer or not. Budenholzer was smart enough to understand the guards outside of Holiday didn't defend real well and couldn't stop people going to the basket. So he kept the big men deep. But now with that change, it hurt them worse. Their defense is abysmal. One of the worst in the league. They just get chewed up going to the basket all night. That was another thing. And then the realization, by the way, they hired Doc Rivers a couple of weeks ago to be a consultant. But the realization was, look, Lillard's getting older. We just re-signed Giannis. We've got to go for it now. And what did they do? That's when they decided to pull the switch. They didn't want to wait until Griffin became a good coach. The thing I always look at, though, if you have Giannis and you're hiring a coach, you want to hire somebody with experience. Because and a lot of GMs, Boston did it last year. A lot of GMs do this, and I'm not going to knock Brad Stevens because he made some great trades. But a lot of GMs hire inexperienced coaches with teams that are built to win right now. That's the mistake. And there's so many mistakes. But then the last thing I'll say is the GM was smart. You get rid of the coach, you save yourself. And he keeps himself for another day. And he's got Doc Rivers now for 3.5 years, which is plenty of time where it's make or break. Though I think their window is not that wide open for 3 years. I think it's a year or two, and at best.
Interesting. Well, I can honestly say again, here out in the West Coast, I think I can speak for most NBA fans. It was a shock. I didn't know about Terry Stotts until you and I talked. But yeah, it certainly seemed like there were a lot of orange flags, maybe a few red ones. So it was not as shocking as maybe it appeared to be. You mentioned. Oh, go ahead.
One more piece too.
Yeah.
Besides Stotts, there's a whole bunch of things that went wrong, but again, the Bucks, I think they handled it poorly, obviously, and they just messed it up. There were so many. Giannis during the game against Boston back the day before Thanksgiving, the night before Thanksgiving, Giannis was taken out and he was mad.
Right.
And basically, it showed there's a little friction there.
Yeah.
And that was one more thing that this wasn't the good ship lollipop. And obviously, all these things came to roost. And if Giannis isn't happy, he's the franchise, so you make him happy.
Yeah. It's tough because you're not meant to love your coach. You're really not. It's good if you do. You're meant to respect him, for sure, or her. But you're not meant to, you can butt heads a little bit. Like I remember that conflict, and I think, he complained and then, he went right back in. What I thought was weird about that interaction was who's coaching who, right? Because Giannis came out, he complained, and all of a sudden he's right back in. So there was some oddity there for sure. But let's hope that things are righted in Milwaukee for the sake of their fans and the franchise. You mentioned Doc Rivers. Well, staying on that subject, you brought this up as well. That vacancy didn't last long. It was filled with Doc Rivers or by Doc Rivers. Doc keeps getting chances since his championship in 2008 in Boston, but he can't seem to match that success. He didn't in Los Angeles with the Clippers. He didn't in Philadelphia with the Sixers. These are really, really good teams, but he didn't match his success, and he had some kind of monumental failures in the playoffs. So let me ask you, do you think Doc Rivers is a good fit for Milwaukee?
I think it's the best veteran coach out there.
Right.
I don't know what kind of fit, but I also think that Giannis and Lillard have a lot in this. Meaning, if Doc goes down, people are going to begin to examine their role in the whole mess. And their role's pretty deep because they're the ones, I believe Giannis, Holiday, and maybe Middleton interviewed and chose Adrian Griffin. And then Giannis probably could have stuck up for him if he wanted him to be kept. He didn't. I know he's avoiding that right now, but those are the facts. So he's got to. He's really married to Doc because he has to be. And it'll be interesting to see what they do offensively because Doc is more of an ISO coach, an isolation coach. And how are you going to fix that, or what are you going to do with it? And of course, I think they were very low in the amount of times they screen and rolled with Giannis and Lillard, meaning very low considering the two great offensive players. So I'm sure Doc is going to run that and beat it to death because that's his best offense he can use.
Yeah. Doc said today that, it's such a great opportunity. When he was asked, why'd you pick this job? He was like, well, because of Dame and Giannis. Duh. Yeah. It's the kind of thing where, I mean, listen, I don't mean to devalue coaching at all, but I bet you I could probably lead that team to 500 record. So it's got to be on Doc to to really bring the best out of these guys and kind of salvage a season in a way. But we'll see how it plays out. Wasn't all that happened in the NBA. Just what's the biggest story? Oh, please.
For you. Looking at where we are now with Lillard and Drew Holiday and all that, and thinking about Milwaukee, who would you rather have on your team?
Between
Holiday and Lillard.
Oh, no, No, I'd rather have Drew Holiday. I mean, listen, we know who they were. That was a championship team with Drew Holiday. They literally won it. I understand why they made the trade for Dame. I think knowing what they know now, maybe looking back, they don't make that trade. That's an interesting question, if that's what you're asking.
Yes.
But yeah, as an outsider, looking in, I'm a fan of Dame Lillard. I think, I don't trust anybody more with the basketball at the end of the game with a 3-pointer to make, than Dame Lillard. He's incredible. But yeah, I think that I don't know that anybody would admit it, but I think if they had a do-over, they might take it. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, let's go. Let's keep going. You mentioned in your article that the other NBA news was a trade that sent Terry Rozier to the Miami Heat for Kyle Lowry and a first-round pick. Terry Rozier is good, having a great season. How much better are the Miami Heat with Terry Rozier?
Well, they're better than what they were because obviously at this point, he's a much better player than Lowry at this point in their careers. But I don't know. They need size. They need some size. They have Bam, and then they have a bunch of Kevin Love, who's, he's got a lot of tire, very little left on the tire. And who else? Whomever else? Thomas Bryant. I mean, they could use a real four to help them get over that. I also, you're starting to see not a lot, but little cracks in Jimmy Butler, meaning age is starting to set in. So it's
Happens to everybody.
Yeah, and it's a tough situation for them. It's a good start, but they need one more deal. And the other thing, too, if you watched the Boston game the other night, Boston continually found Tyler Hero and went at him. And he doesn't defend real well. He's a great shooter, but he doesn't defend. In Miami, they hang their hat on defense. So I don't know what they're going to do, but it's a problem.
And today they're better, and that's what you want with just about every trade. You want to get better. You want to be better, and I think that they did that with Terry Rozier. I will call out. We have a great partnership with a site called FL Teams, who is run by a great friend named Isaac Edelman, who's a big fan of Omar Yurtseven, who the Miami Heat had, a great big, who is now in Utah. So the Heat had the answer, but they let him go. Inside joke. You're welcome, Isaac. All right, let's go to. We're staying in the West. This is the first time that the West has been mentioned, actually, at least in our recap. We'll make sure to link to Steve's article so you could read all of his thoughts. He commented, talking to you, so let me say it, you commented on the Minnesota Wolves, and I'm reading this verbatim. These are the Minnesota Wolves who have been at the top of the standings since day one. This is a team that led the NBA in defense. This is a very good basketball team. You said of that team, they're talented, but don't seem to be ready for the big time. So I got to ask you on behalf of all Minnesotans everywhere, Steve, why do you hate the North Central U.S.?
I'm a big Minnesota fan. Before we do that, I just wanted to ask Isaac if he would take Jason Tatum now. But let me go to somewhere else.
All right.
I'm a big fan of Minnesota. But if you watch their games, and I try to catch as much as I can, if you watch their games, a couple weeks ago, Jaden McDaniels, they had the Lakers by 4. Jaden Daniels fouled out or whatever, and on the way out, he got a tee. That cut the lead to 3. Not within the last few seconds of the game. That's when LeBron made that shot that he might have evidently was behind the line.
Right.
If he was ruled on the line, That technical would have that's immaturity. Then you
Mhm.
you complicate that. You go when they're playing Boston. They have Boston. They're down by 7. He's got 5 fouls on him, but he's a great defensive player. What does he do? Boston on transition. Boston gets the turnover, kicks it. Tatum's got the ball and he fouls him. It almost looked like a take foul. And Boston gets 2 shots out of that, which Tatum, makes. Why? And he fouls out. And he's the guy that does a great job against Tatum defensively. It doesn't say maturity. Then the other night, they're playing. Karl Anthony Towns is going off with 44 in the first half. They're trying to give him the ball. They're playing Charlotte. Win the game. And their coach, who I give a lot of credit, Chris Finch, he went off. And,
he did.
And I agree with that. This is evidence. They lost 2 games they should have won. Well, they beat the Lakers, but they lost the other 2 games to Charlotte and Boston on immaturity and silliness. It's going to take a while. Perhaps that's a great place for Kyle Lowry to land because they do have Connolly, but he's another veteran that maybe can teach them. I'm not giving up on Minnesota, but they've got a lot of growing up to do. And what's interesting, when Finch called them out, the team, they responded he was right. So they got it. So let's see if they fix their behavior.
Interesting. Well, now's the time to do it, right? I mean, now's the time to do it during the regular season. This is when you want to get all of that out, right? And you want to grow as a team because, when the playoffs tip, it's a different ball game. I wasn't going to ask. We've got about a minute before the shot clock goes off. It's a great point. Kyle Lowry will likely not play in Charlotte. Will likely be bought out some way or another. Yeah, he's probably going to end up with a team that's in the top 4 right now. Lakers are getting a lot of buzz because they could use a player like that. But what a great fit in Minnesota. I mean, they've got Mike Conley, right, who's a great point guard. But if you have somebody like Lowry with that championship pedigree, maybe off the bench, that's a great fit.
Keep in mind, you can't go over if you are in the tax on the salary cap.
Mm-hmm.
You can only buy on a buyout. You can only do it if the guy makes the mid-level exception, which is around 12.5 million. Anybody making more than that, you can't sign if you're in the tax. Now, that eliminates Boston, Golden State, a whole mess of teams. I believe Milwaukee. So Lowry is kind of restricted on where he can go. Even Philadelphia is over the tax, but they can get rid of a salary and get themselves under if they want him. But that makes it more interesting on where Lowry goes. But he's a valuable pickup.
Yeah.
The year.
Yeah. Outstanding. Be interesting to see where he ends up. It'll be interesting to see where things land after there's the buzz. That's about as close as we've come, man. Well done. I almost got the shot off, but I didn't. But yeah, I have some hope that this is going to be a trade deadline with some activity. Every season, it seems to be more rumors than actual action. There's a lot of rumors right now. And obviously, we've seen a lot of movement in Toronto. Let's see what happens.
Yep. There's another week and a half or so to go before the deadline.
Yep.
So there's a lot of teams that will be trying to figure this out. I think the Heat are in a position they have to do something. It's not a great situation, and they're going to probably end up in a play-in game because, between the Knicks, and 2 other who it's escaping me right now, but there's 2 other teams with them, 4, 5, and 6. Cleveland, and they're in Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to have to get hot to overtake them. If not, they're in a playing game.
Yeah.
And you never know what you're going to get with them. So it gets very interesting.
This is definitely the time of season when things get interesting, right? And then after the trade deadline, the dust is going to settle, and then we'll get a clear picture. This is why we're fans, man. This is absolutely the best time of the year. Well, that's it. Our time is up. You heard the shot clock go off. Thank you for listening. As always, please consider subscribing and join us next week on the 13 Rules NBA Random Thoughts podcast, the best 15 minutes of NBA random thoughts online. We'll talk next week. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
All right, man. And if you happen to join us for this raw footage on YouTube, Insta, TikTok, thank you. We're glad you joined. Like I said, we if you left comments, we couldn't see them, but we'll make sure to check them out and add them to our show. All right, man. That's it then.
Yep.
Are you going to do the watch party? You going to join for a little bit?
Well, yeah. I'll come on. Yeah, if that's what you want, yeah, gladly.
Right. Only for a little, man.
Yeah,
I know it's a lot more fun to watch the game than to post it.
I kind of have a clue. I don't see as much West Coast games because it's late, and us old people have to be in bed. But I kind of have, any other two teams, but the Celtics I kind of take seriously. And by the way, you're too young, but do you remember when the Knicks won the title in 70 or 69 when Willis came out of the tunnel?
I heard about it, but I don't know.
I have a good trivia question too in a second, but anyway, I was thinking about this. The Knicks right now are like they were the year before when Boston won it. And what I mean by that, the year before they played Boston in the conference finals, and 6 tough games, Boston beat them. You knew that this team was going somewhere. If you watch the Knicks now, they're going somewhere. I'm not a big OG, whatever his name is. I'm not a big fan of him, but I just think Brunson has elevated himself to one of the best 10, 20, 15 guys in the league.
Yep.
So that's a quick take for what it's worth.
And a good take. They're 8-2 of their last 10. They've won
look
their
at who they're
last
playing.
5.
Stop and look at who they're beating. No, they're not beating great teams.
You beat who's in front of you, man. It doesn't matter.
But the 8-2 should be 8-2 considering who they're beating as well.
I got you.
I'm not arguing that. Of course, you got to play the games on a schedule. But the point, and I think they're dangerous. They're a dangerous team. Yeah. And I think if they're smart, I think they'd rather come. Why? Because they figure if they figure it out, Boston's the favorite. They'd rather play them in the finals than have to play them in the second round.
Sure.
I think, and by the way, and the other thing too, I watched a lot of Cleveland last night. They're dangerous. And they only got 2 guys. The other 2 stars aren't playing. Jared Allen is just a stud. Yeah. And Mitchell just can shoot it from anywhere.
I love this time of year. I'm going to leave you with this because the other 8-2 team right now, I mean, there's a few others, but the Clippers 8-2 over the last 10, winners of the last 4. They're peaking right now and coming into Boston in a revenge game because they were destroyed in the last game. The Celtics just dismantled them. This is a big game for Los Angeles. So shameless plug, join us for a watch party. We're going to be watching that on our other playback channel in about 3 hours, 2-3 hours.
Let me ask you one question. You got Phoenix, you got the Clippers, Oklahoma, Minnesota, and Denver. It's 5 teams. Which one's out in the second round?
Well, honestly, if I had to pick, I'm absolutely going to go with the teams that haven't been there before, right? And so I agree with you. I mean, the Timberwolves and the Thunder have got something to prove. They're great teams, but they've not progressed. Now, if the Thunder or the Timberwolves come out at number 1, which they very well could, they'll probably beat number 8. But keep in mind, number 8 could be the Los Angeles Lakers. Right? They made it to the Western Conference Finals last season. LeBron James. There's a lot of pressure playing against that team.
Well, yeah, I thought you would have said 2 teams would come out so the Lakers would get there. Because I know how you feel about the Lakers and what you're thinking. But, it's a very interesting thing to really look at and think about. And don't forget, if Dallas stays healthy and they can get a 4 that can play. Everybody wants a 4. They're dangerous.
Yeah.
They're
I
dangerous.
mean, I'm looking at the West right now. I mean, Thunder and Timberwolves probably don't strike fear into a lot of teams. They're very, very good, but because of what you mentioned, they've not been there before. When it comes playoff time, but then you look at the Clippers, the Nuggets, the Kings probably fall into that same category as the Thunder and the Timberwolves.
They need defense.
Mhm.
They don't defend at all.
The Suns, just in horsepower alone, right? Offensive firepower. The Pelicans, there's two bundles, right? It's clear, right? I think the Thunder, the Timberwolves, the Kings, and the Pelicans are into the bundle of good, solid teams that you're not necessarily scared of, where you don't want to match up against the Clippers, the Nuggets, the Suns. The Mavs might be a bubble team.
Well, if you get another player, because Grant Williams hasn't really turned out.
Yeah, which is odd because he was so good in Boston.
He's not shooting well. He's not doing
Such a good fit, I thought.
And I know they're upset. They got 3 more years with him after that. Here's a question for you for tonight to use. Who's the only player in NBA history to win the regular season MVP, the All-Star MVP, and the Finals MVP?
Only one time that's happened?
I believe it's so. Maybe I'm wrong, but I know the one time.
Okay, I'm not going to guess, but I'm going to think about it. So MVP season, All-Star MVP, and Finals MVP. That's awesome. Surprised it's only happened once.
I believe so. I have to look it up, but I know when it happened. Living in the Jersey area, I'm giving you a hint.
You just gave me a hint. Yeah, you just gave me the answer, I think.
A lot of my friends gave me a hard time.
All right. Yeah, I'll share my guess on Slack. But yeah, okay. I'm gonna try and get this podcast posted before. But yeah, thanks again. And
wait, Jose, when I come on tonight, what do I do? Like just go on Playback TV? What do I do?
Yeah. Go to playback.tv, thePeachBasket, and we'll see you. If you're Henry, we'll bring you on. If you're Steve, you should be able to
probably be Henry.
You'll be Henry?
Yeah, it's easier.
All right. I think I'll be Hector. I'll be Hector.
Henry was my dearly beloved cat.
So, oh,
my wife did it, but yeah, it was nice. He was everywhere I was. Whatever I did, he followed. But that's a whole story. Anyway, yeah, okay. All right, you'll see me.
We'll see you then. Thanks, Steve. Bye, everyone. Thank you.